Fundamentally, the question I was raising for myself was, well, what is it that I would like people in other fields to know about transfer when it comes to writing? Writing in different disciplines is really very different. And what I often do when I make that claim, that's a claim, actually, that's not just a a claim is something I think I can evidence. A proposition is something that is still in search of sufficient evidence to the claim. Writing is different in different disciplines, and my example here is the University of Minnesota Writing Across Curriculum program, which is called the WEC program, Writing Enriched Curriculum, and they have wonderful writing plans from any 20-some departments, and they're eventually going to work their way across the entire university. And if you look at writing in mechanical engineering, and then you look at writing in dance, and then you look at writing in social, and then you look at writing in African American studies, believe me, it's different, okay, one to the next. And even in fields that seem to be so close as writing and history, it's really very different. So what are those differences? Now, in the WEC program, it's keyed to 3 questions. What are the questions or problems that the discipline takes up? Second, what kinds of evidence count in the discipline? And third, what are the genres that the discipline calls on to make knowledge? So that's one way of getting a handle on what the differentiation across disciplinary contexts looks like. That's one. The second is that students need both practice and knowledge. Sometimes people talk about that as declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge, and I will grant you that that's the more conventional approach. But the reason I prefer to talk about basically writing knowledge and writing practice is that writing holds the 2 terms together, and that's the focus of energy, while it clearly disambiguates knowledge from practice. Now, they're related, I grant you, but they're different. And people in writing studies only now are really getting a handle on what writing knowledge people need to do a better job as writers. So that's, I think, a very fruitful area.
Like any complex activity, I think the most important thing that people at the universities need to know about the transfer of writing studies is that we're learning new things, how writing changes in different contexts, but we're also deepening, and I think that gets left out. We're going deeper into an understanding of how things work with writing and why we might put things together in different ways or take them apart. I mean, composition is putting things together and taking things apart. And so that's why we need mid-level courses as well as our disciplinary writing courses and capstone projects.
Writing is, like anything, a sustained practice. I worry about the number of students who write in the first year and don't write again until their junior or even senior year, at least at my institution. And that's like asking someone to practice ballet their freshman year and then do Swan Lake their senior year with nothing in between. So one is sustained writing. And the other is that instructors need to know that genres are different, and they should not expect that a first-year course has prepared students for that genre. We hope that we can prepare students to ask questions to learn the genre, but I still run into a lot of professors who think students should somehow know how a lab report is done. They've got to be taught that as a genre, as a rhetorical situation.
If you talk to students intentionally and deliberately about the goal of transfer and how each of the assignments, particularly the larger assignments, how they're designed to transfer, I find that they will take that to heart and apply themselves a lot better in terms of taking the information and making it work in a new context, because they understand what you're trying to teach them and they go with the flow instead of sort of swimming upstream.
Standalone writing courses instill knowledge of writing. And when we have first-year experience courses and other kinds of courses, I think the knowledge that students take are usually knowledge of the theme or the subject matter and not the writing knowledge. And so I think those are really important, but they're not sufficient.
What I would say is 2 things. One, I think what Liane and I have found in our research is that you can, in fact, teach for transfer if you deliberately and intentionally do so. And I think the other thing that we found, the second thing is that you have to have a very specific type of curriculum that is centered on key terms and framework of reflection and the students creating a theory of writing. And I think together what that shows us is that students can take what they learn in our course and apply it to other writing situations in very interesting and meaningful ways. So success is not defined in a neat, tight little box. It's more they take it, and that what they're able to do is reframe the new writing situations in ways that allow them to understand it and further their writing abilities and writing processes.
What's not working so well is content that confuses students, and that turns out to be within a couple of sort of buckets. So one is things that look familiar to what they've learned in high school, so like a literature-based curriculum that they've learned in high school. What that does is tell them that this college writing is going to be the same as high school writing, and it's not. And so that can be confusing for them. They sort of go back to their old ways and aren't as open to learning in new ways if it doesn't look different. And that can, even if they start to learn that it's different a little bit later in the semester, it doesn't start them out well. The second type of content that doesn't work very well is some of the themed courses that we see, and there's so many of them out there, right? It could be a theme about, I've seen themes about vampires, or even themes, about cultural studies. I'm not sure how well that's working, because what happens is, with the themed approach, is students latch onto the theme. They focus on the theme rather than the stuff about writing that you want them to learn. They like the theme. That's why they sign up for a themed course, right? They go for something that's exciting to them. Maybe they want to be foodies, and they sign up for a course on, sustainability, organic food, or whatever. And then they get really into that, and they research that, and they talk about that instead of learning about the writing. So what does work then is what we found is concepts of writing. So a theoretical approach that will help students create a framework of knowledge that they can apply to new contexts. And that requires theory about writing, writing concepts like rhetorical situation, for example, discussion of audience and purpose, and so that kind of theory, and then a reflective component that's pretty sophisticated. So reflective practice constructed at various levels. It's reiterative. It goes on throughout the whole semester so that they can continue to take what they've learned theoretically, apply it in a situation, then another writing situation, then another, and start to see the connections that they can then take with them out to another course.
There are traditional kinds of practices that writing studies has been very good at it for about 40 years now, that faculty in other disciplines can adopt and adapt, and no doubt will, but those practices want to be carried forward, and the research shows actually that students are inclined to carry it forward with some encouragement, of course. So what do I mean by that? I mean writing as a process. I mean getting feedback from writing, not necessarily always from the faculty member, but getting some kind of feedback so that writing is a social activity. There's a wonderful book by Mary Soliday called Everyday Genres that looks at the role of real genres and students writing real genres in their being better motivated and feeling that they're making a contribution. One example that comes from her book is someone who's teaching a developmental psychology class for people who are working with very young children. And basically what the faculty member wanted the students to do in this writing assignment was to synthesize the reading and to connect that to some field observations in a preschool daycare kind of setting. And I mean, that's not an uncommon assignment where we want students to read, to synthesize, to connect it to real world field experience and so forth. So very common. Students didn't like it much. The faculty member wasn't very happy with the results, but it sounds familiar. So what she did was to change the assignment so that the assignment, rather than it being a school assignment, was in fact a report on a given child in the preschool center that went to the teacher of the preschool center that would help her work with that child. And guess what? all of a sudden the students basically sat up and paid attention. Oh, I have a role here to play. I have a contribution I can make. So it was the same set of activities, but it was a real genre. Okay, it was a case study. This is a real genre. It went to a real audience. It could make a real difference. Apart from the real difference that makes in learning. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that the fact that you're learning that doesn't make a difference. Clearly it does. But the role of writing, the role of genres, the role of having a real audience, all of those are terribly important factors, and that's a fourth consideration. I could go on, but if you can do those 4 things and ask about students' prior knowledge, please ask about their prior knowledge. You can't get all of it, but you can get a little bit, and you'll be so much smarter as an instructor because you will know what they're bringing in the door with them. And where that prior knowledge works, you can say, great, build on that. Where really it's not a good fit with what you're doing, now you know it's not a good fit, and you can say, not so much, maybe we need to change this. So I guess there are 5 things. At the risk of adding another 5, I think I should stop now. But if you can do those 5, I think you will find that your students will be better motivated, that they will be better writers, and I'm not sure that the world will be a better place, but it might be.